Someone You Should Know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, hello, and I welcome you to another episode of Someone You Should Know. The hat may give it away, a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm really proud to be wearing my hat because my guest and I have a few things in common. We are brought to you, as we are every week, by Christine Dean, who is the networkingdiva.com. And you need to just reach out to Christine sometime if you have any questions, no matter how important or how unimportant you may think they are, they're important to Christine. If you want to take your marketing to the next level, you want to reach out and talk to her about your website, about doing a podcast like this, she can take care of it. She's well-versed in it, and she gives me the freedom to just talk to my guests because she's behind the scenes producing this show, and she knows what she's doing. Reach out to her, thenetworkingdiva.com. Go into the website and you can have a free consultation with her also. Well, I alluded to the fact that I'm wearing the cap, and I'll bet that those of you that have been following me all these years, you never knew that I had a brother. You know about my sister, but you never knew I had a brother. Well, my guest today is my brother, Jack Hager. Welcome, Jack.
Great to be with you, Stuart.
And the reason we say that is because when we address each other and all, we say, "Welcome home, brother."
Absolutely.
And that has a meaning. Now, in my earlier research, you served in Vietnam about a year before I did. You were there, what, 68, 69?
That's correct.
And I was there 69 and 70. What unit were you with?
11th Cav. 11th Armored Cav.
And would you consider your tour of Vietnam a good time or a stressful time? It obviously is something that has lasted with both of us ever since that time.
Stressful would be better than good. It was good to come home. I don't have any regrets serving. I have regrets the outcome, etc., but I don't have any regrets serving.
And when I talk to a lot of veterans, whether it's through the Vietnam Veterans of America organization or the American Legion, the VFW, whatever, that's a very, very common theme for those of us who did at a very tough time in our nation that was so anti-war that we put on the uniform. We served our country because we felt it was our duty, but after the war, we all looked back on it and said, while we were there to support the effort, we didn't necessarily agree with why we were there.
Absolutely correct. Or agree with the way that it was carried out or not carried out.
Yeah. And you know what is surprising and interesting to me, Jack, is that here we are, fast forward 50 some years, and we went into Iraq and Afghanistan, and it was like we didn't learn a lesson from Vietnam.
I think the toughest thing that I had post-Vietnam was as we were pulling out of Afghanistan. It looked just like Saigon, just the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we were there to try and make changes, but when you realized that it was a fruitless effort, which we did, and we followed in the French's, the French footsteps, because they were there, they pulled out and said, this is fruitless, but we went in to try and help. And again, I pat you on the back, you pat me on the back. We applaud our brothers and sisters that went, because we look back on it and say that maybe we didn't go for all the right reasons. And it took both of us a long, long time when we came home for people to look us square in the eye and say, "Welcome home."
Absolutely. I was during Iraq and Afghanistan, at least the people that were against the war did not seem to be against the warriors, as opposed to our experience.
Yeah. Have you carried demons with you ever since those days over in Vietnam?
Not really. I don't think, I think PTSD is definitely a real thing. I think like a lot of things may be overdiagnosed, but that's probably for another conversation. That has not been my experience, for which I'm very grateful. I am comfortable reading about Vietnam or watching a movie about Vietnam. It doesn't freak me out or take me back. And there's not a one size fits all. That doesn't mean that guys are struggling or girls are weaker or anything else. It's just we're all made up differently, and we all come home with different baggage, and sometimes we tuck it away. Sometimes it may leap out of the suitcase at an unexpected time. But thus far, that hasn't been my experience.
And the interesting thing about you, Jack, is that you were raised in the Army.
I'm one of them. I'm an Army brat.
You're an Army brat, and so what was it like growing up around with the military all around you?
It was unique, and the biggest thing was moving all the time. I was born in Massachusetts, had the good sense to leave when I was 9 months old, went to Germany for 5 years, came back and moved all the time. There's pluses and minuses. The pluses are you see a lot. The minuses are close friendships are not happening because you never know when you might actually be sent somewhere else.
Yeah, you form them and then you have to put them on the shelf.
Absolutely.
And so, your father was in the service, and about what age did he retire from the service?
About 60, I think. Maybe a little younger. I tell people I grew up in a screwed up family. At least that's what I used to call it until I went to college and found out we were dysfunctional. Dysfunctional sounds so much better.
Yeah,
And,
well, that's the proper way to say it.
My folks were functioning alcoholics. They, to the best of my knowledge, they didn't abuse me. They just kind of nothinged me, which I suppose could be classified as abuse. But I don't blame them for any of my dumb choices or anything else. Certainly that contributes, but I'm a real strong proponent of personal responsibility. You make your choices, then your choices make you.
Very, very true and very well said, because you had issues as a teenager. You weren't that model student, were you? You use the word dysfunction when you're talking about the family dynamic when you were growing up in the military. Do you think that affected your time in the service when you then went into the military? Did you struggle a little bit? Do you at all put that label of dysfunction on your head too?
No, I don't think so, because in a situation like that, you're not sure that it's not normative to be in that type of a situation. And I had moved out when I was 14. I was doing all kinds of dumb stuff. And I don't see that affecting me then or now. It may have contributed to things, but it didn't directly affect me in a negative or positive way.
Well, I'm just thinking of the couple of things that you've just said. You moved out when you were 14 years old and you kind of got into some trouble. Is that because maybe there was that lack of discipline when you were growing up because there was a disconnect with your parents?
I think that's definitely part of it. I have very few memories the other side of 12 for whatever reason. But I don't remember being disciplined. I remember being yelled at a little bit, but I don't remember being really disciplined. I don't remember being frankly loved. I have no memory of Christmases or other holidays, whether that's some type of a protective thing or some type of a underlying cutoff that's trying
Right.
I have no clue what it is, but it's just not. I remember the dogs we had in Germany. I remember horseflies in Texas. I remember French bread in Boston. But as far as interactions with them or anybody else, the other side of 12 is pretty vague, very vague.
And when did you enter the military? How old were you?
18, right out of high school. Even though I was goofing up, I stayed in high school, graduated was given a couple of scholarships, but I didn't want to go to school. Didn't want to go to Vietnam, so talked to my handy dandy recruiter and enlisted for 4 years with the assurance that I might not even go overseas, much less to Vietnam.
Yeah, well, we all know how that works out.
Roger that. Yep. So I spent 2 years in Korea, 2 months in Germany, and the rest in Nam.
And then when you came home from Vietnam, what was life like when you got back into the States?
By that time, I was an alcoholic myself. I was doing other kinds of drugs. I was very much in hate with America at that particular point in time, primarily because of Vietnam. It backs up a little bit because I was in Korea when the North Koreans swiped the Pueblo, that most listeners probably have no idea what that was. But that was the most scared I've ever been in my life when they seized the spy ship, because of my security clearance, I knew that everything we had in South Korea was nuclear. And I really thought we were going to go to nuclear war because I didn't think we'd sell those guys out. Silly me. And then I was in Germany 2 weeks ahead of time. They told us Russia was going to invade Czechoslovakia. They moved us out on the border to gather intel and did nothing. I got to Nam right after Tet. And so it was a combination of things that I was less than enchanted with the country. I definitely did hate it at that point.
Yeah, it was a troubled time, for all of us. The 60s were very, very challenging, politically, economically, socially, everywhere. We were all challenged, and that's what I said. I mean, to a certain extent, I would have to say that those times that we went through in the 60s, I think made me a better person today. Because I had that foundation to grow and build on. But it was tough. So what was life like for you when you got back? You said you dealt a bit with alcoholism and a drug problem. Where did you go from there?
I wanted to get out of the country, so I went to Kwajalein and the Marshall Islands. Downrange for the Pacific Missile Range. There was a ad in the paper that said, "Have you recently been discharged? Did you have a top secret clearance? Come see us." So I went. They hired me. They hired me as a radar intercept operator. I couldn't even spell radar. I knew what, but it's one of those government cost plus things. Went to Kwaj and had nothing to do. So I drove a forklift for a while, got bored, came back to the States, and got involved with dealing drugs and guns and stuff.
Wait a minute. Let's not just run right over that. You got involved in stealing and what?
Drug sales, gun sales, other stuff. Working with it wasn't a big organization, but it was a West Coast organization that specialized in those things back when marijuana was illegal.
Wow. And then what happened?
Got busted. December of 1973, I was arrested in Texas. Texas had no charges on me. They were picking me up on fugitive warrants. Unbeknownst to us, they had a snitch working with us. They had the phones tapped. And over a period of time, a joint interagency narcotics squad built up a case and busted a bunch of us the same time, the same day. Was extradited eventually. I didn't fight extradition, but I was extradited from Texas to Oregon, was eventually sentenced to 10, did 4 of the 10, got out, and the rest is history, so to speak. And let me be quick to point out, I didn't do drugs or sell drugs because of Vietnam or because of the Army. Those things contribute, but the bottom line is I made choices. And in my case, I made stupid choices. And as I mentioned earlier, you make your choices, then your choices make you. And you could spend the rest of your life blaming Vietnam or blaming your parents or blaming the color of your skin or blaming that you were poorly potty trained. Or you can man up and take responsibility for your life and change it.
I think it's fair to say that we as a society today, nobody wants to take the blame for anything. They want to shift it and point the finger everywhere else except in their own faces.
it wasn't original to me, but years ago I heard somebody say the biggest obscenity is, it's not my fault. And I think that's accurate, whether it's a 5-year-old kid or a 50-year-old man.
Yeah.
It's your fault. Yeah, there may have been a whole lot of contributing things, but you got to get over that stuff and move ahead.
So you're a military veteran, and now you're sitting in a prison cell for, you said four out of a 10-year sentence.
Yep.
All right. So now share with the people that are watching and listening, what were those 4 years like?
I think the easiest way to say it is that if I were in some kind of time machine and given the choice of going back to Vietnam or going back to prison, I'd go back to Nam in a heartbeat. Because at least there you had some idea who the bad guy was. You had some idea what might happen. In a maximum security prison, you have no clue. It's not constant terror, but it's a constant awareness that you could die for being in the wrong place. You could die for being white. You could die because somebody starts a rumor about you. It's just as close to hell as I will get by the grace of God.
And because you were there for drugs and stealing and all that puts you in kind of a tough position too, because it's not uncommon that prisoners often use prison time to learn more about their craft than about overcoming it.
Exactly. And I think, if I can backtrack a little bit, the worst thing about the prison system, in my experience, is that they unintentionally program you to fail. Meaning that when I checked into the joint, they gave me all the tests, the word association tests, the IQ tests, the ink blot tests, interviewed by shrinks and psychologists and other things. At the end of that time, they said, Mr. Hager, the reason why you're a dealer and a thief is because of the bad attitude you have because of the service you did in Vietnam. And
really?
What did they just tell me? It's not my fault. It's not. And I think they have good intentions, et cetera and so forth, but they just basically tell you without telling you that, okay, you had all the stuff to overcome, you didn't overcome it, and the reason you're here is because of something else, instead of the reason you're here is because you blew it. You roll the dice, now you get to pay the price.
Yeah, except you weren't convicted for being in Vietnam. You were convicted for things that you did after Vietnam.
Copy that.
So
prison being, as you mentioned earlier, prison being a college for advanced criminal activity is really there. And again, when you check into the joint, and in jail and prison are two different animals, but when you check into prison, the first choice, the first decision you have to make is, are you going to do your own time, or are you going to identify with one of the gangs, et cetera and so forth? Because being part of the gang means it's easier to score drugs, easier to score anything else, but it also means you're no longer doing your time, you're doing their time.
Right.
And when the parole board meets and they look at your file and they see that you're running with a certain gang, that automatically puts you in a bad light in their eyes. And so I just made the determination that I was just going to do my time and back to the wall. I think the fact that I was 26, the fact that I was a non-vet made it easier in some ways to do time, stay alert, stay alive, keep your back to the wall, that kind of stuff. But still was not a whole lot of fun.
So what did you learn from that prison experience?
Myriad of stuff. Number one, I became a follower of Christ while I was locked up, and that's obviously very close to my story, very important to my story. Number two, just recognizing that in my interactions with guys, just the way the system makes recidivism almost a certainty. Not for everybody, but it's just you're surrounded in that environment. They keep telling you, you need to go to this program, you need to go to this step program, you need to go here, get your act together, which can help, but it's still got to be that baseline of, hey, you blew it. Because unless and until, with or without faith, with or without anything, unless and until I take responsibility for my life, I can't change it. I can maybe play the game for a little while, but it's not going to be a lasting change until I man up and say, I blew it, and move ahead.
Well, so now you're in your mid 20s, and you've probably been through more than most people can even dream of. But you said that you found spirituality when you were in prison too, and that was going to help you once you got out. Number one, how was it that you got out after 4 years instead of being there for the 10-year sentence that you were sent there to
Because I was
serve?
such a wonderful human being, or because they're so overcrowded, they have to do something.
They had to early release.
Exactly. Yeah, it was. I was on parole for a little over almost 2 years. Theoretically, I'd be on parole for the rest of the time, but POs are tremendously overworked too. The system is broken. The system is maybe irreparable, and that's just the unfortunate way it is.
So what did you do with your life after prison?
Prior to prison, I had never been in church, had no concept of who Jesus Christ claimed to be. Read a book that led me to reading the Bible. In reading the Bible, I converted, got born again, saved, whatever term you want to use. When I got out, the first job I had was a minister of sanitation, otherwise known as a janitor at a small church. And through that, I met a guy who told me about a Bible school in Kansas City. Eventually got my parole switched to KC, went to a Bible school there, and have been in full-time vocational youth and prison ministry since 1978. And that's been my gig and been my privilege and been my responsibility.
So you've been doing that since the late 70s?
Yeah, since 78.
All right. So yeah. So now, I'm my mind is running now, because now you are a guy that's got a pretty tainted past and everything. Now you're a minister and you're working with kids and you're trying to get them on the straight and narrow. Do you feel that because of your past, you were able to reach out to the young people and youth and make a difference in their lives?
I think that's definitely part of it. Oddly, after a while, I figured out that even though I was old then, and now I'm older than dirt, but still do it, especially in the 70s, 80s, I think my crazy upbringing helped me to relate to kids more, because I could talk to kids my age and say, I have no relationship with or people my age and say, I have no relationship with my parents. They go, oh my goodness, that's terrible. I talked to a 50-year-old kid back then or today and they yawn because they've been there, done that, or they know so many people that there's no such thing as an illegitimate kid, but there are way too many illegitimate parents.
Yeah. And you said your parents were disconnected from you in your childhood. I think we're starting to see that again because of social media. There's a disconnect with the kids. Parents don't know what their kids are doing, and the kids are doing it because their parents aren't watching.
Exactly. It's just gravity flows south, and it's not, it's just, I can't even imagine, back in my day, you had to go in the store and have somebody distract the clerk while we swiped a Playboy or something.
Yeah.
Now a 5-year-old kid finds it on his phone without looking for it. And all the other stuff that goes on with it. There's so many pluses to the internet, et cetera, but there's so many minuses, and I wish there was a better way to control it. But the bottom line is parents need to be involved with their kids.
You have written a book, folks, the website that we're scrolling, I want you to visit it, because it is a listing of a lot of blogs that Jack has been involved in, and I find them fascinating. Went in and I've listened to several, and I want to listen to more of them too. But it's you really opening up your heart and your soul and sharing not only your experiences but your thoughts and all with the people that you're reaching out to. And there's a lot to be learned by that, because I think when we share our thoughts and experiences with others, sometimes what it does is it connects to other people and makes them realize that, hey, you know, my situation maybe isn't that bad, because I've listened to somebody who's had it worse than me.
Definitely that factors into it. And I'm in no way am I proud of what I did. But at the same time, those learned, it's like, I'm sure you had the experience too of having somebody teaching you before you go to NAM or when you first get to NAM, counter ambush, etc. And you kind of, especially before you leave the States, you kind of figure out that this guy's never been in NAM and he's teaching you how to react.
Right.
You know, and that just ain't going to fly. And people can be very, very interested and very involved and very educated on certain things. But I can go into prison or to a teenager that's struggling with drugs, and I could say things that Billy Graham, were he still alive, couldn't say. Not disparaging him, but he hasn't been there, done that. And they can pick up real quick that you have been there, done that, and can figure out how not to do that, hopefully.
You know, in reading over some of the information that you had sent out, you there's a quote here that I want to state, because I want you to expound on it a little bit. It said that you, as Reverend Hager, can't get into a school, but as ex-con Hager, you can.
Yeah, back in the early 80s, I wasn't looking for it, but a friend asked me if I would talk to her students in Union Star High School in Union Star, Missouri. It's not quite the end of the world, but you can see it from there. So I went in and just kind of told my story and stressed personal responsibility. I didn't hide my faith, but obviously that's not a place for me to preach per se. Right. And that just opened the door. All of a sudden I was getting calls from schools. So for about 7 years, I traveled doing school assemblies in big schools, small schools, etc. It was a great experience for me and hopefully helpful to other people. But I did find it ironic that I do have a piece of paper on my wall that says I be a reverend. You can tell how important that is to me. So, but as a minister of the gospel, I can't get into a public school, but as an ex-offender, I can. And I think that says something that's not too complimentary of our society. And again, I don't think school is a place for evangelizing per se as an outside person coming in.
Right.
But I certainly shouldn't lose the right to come in because I happen to be a person of faith or an atheist, as far as that goes. If I have something positive to give, let me in. Yeah.
Well, also part of that story is that religion is what helped get you out of the situation that you were in. Yeah. That like you said, you could have learned a heck of a lot in prison, and when you got out, gone back to robbing and stealing and dealing again. But
I thought about that. I thought, had I not become a follower of Christ, had I not got saved, would I have gone back to it? I don't think I would have gone back to the crime per se. I probably would have gone back to drugs and alcohol. Probably. You can't really figure that stuff out, but I didn't like doing time. I can understand anybody going to prison once. After all these years, I still don't understand people doing life on the installment plan.
Well, it seems to me that for some, prison is a shelter. If they can't make it in the real world and everything, at least they can exercise, they can read, they can get a degree, they get their meals and all, and it's taken care of, and they are sheltered for the rest of their life, or until they're paroled.
Institutionalization is a real thing. Mm-hmm. I think some people make a career out of the military for the same reason some people make a career out of prison. 3 hots in the cot. You don't have to think. You don't have to do anything. And that's a minority of career people in the military, but you know what I'm saying.
Like the military, just follow orders.
Yep. And again, though, to actually be behind the walls, it's just like you and I with Vietnam. We can talk about it, people can read about it, but they're never going to get it. And besides that, the people that talk about it in detail, I don't think ever got out of Saigon. You know, you and I might talk about it off air. We might talk about some of the nitty gritty, but I'm not going to talk to somebody that's never been there, done that. They can't grasp it. They can't understand it. And my counsel to people is, if you're ever around somebody that talks a lot about their experience in Vietnam or Afghanistan or prison, watch their nose. It's probably going to grow because something's wrong. But at the same time, that unique experience has opened doors for ministry, for talking to people that otherwise wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
I can go into prison, again, say things that somebody else can't say, and the guys pretty quickly understand, yep, he'd been here.
Yeah, well, that's the Hollywood aspect of telling the story. Is you can tell the story in its purest form, but every time you tell the story, you have to add a little bit. You have to embellish it. You have to put a little more color into it, and you know that sometimes, as you say, backfires or causes the Pinocchio effect.
And again, the bottom line to me, I hate to sound like a broken record, is just take responsibility for your life, whether you're 15 years old or 70 years old. If you haven't, seize it, take it. It'll set you free. And instead of blaming everything else and coming up with an excuse, you know, even as a believer in Christ, you know, God forgives sins, not excuses. And to paraphrase a military thing, excuses are like elbows. Everybody's got a couple. You know? You just got to man up and do it.
Yeah. So you started living the good life after you encountered all these past trials and tribulations, and you're now working with kids and you're doing well. And folks, I wish I could say that that's the end of the story, that Jack is just this great guy that just goes out and helps people. But that, you know, evil little medical guy turned on you, and you've had some medical issues over the last few years. And what was that like to have to face and encounter that?
Well, real quickly, a couple of years ago, I had my annual physical and everything seemed fine. And then a day or two later, they called. My wife and I were on the road. They called and said, "You need to get to an ER now." That got my attention. And at that point, they discovered they had overlooked a kidney issue. And at that point, my kidneys were functioning at like 7% or some ridiculous thing. But as a result of that, the kidney doctor saw something she didn't like. So she sent me to another doctor who discovered multiple myeloma, a form of blood cancer that has links to Agent Orange. Did Agent Orange actually cause it? I don't know. But because of having boots on the ground in Vietnam, if you come up with virtually any type of cancer nowadays, it didn't used to be that way. Nowadays, they cover you, and you hear a lot of horror stories about the VA, but just a shout out to them. I've had nothing but good experiences with the VA. There's a clinic here in St. Joseph, Missouri. My kidney doctor's in Leavenworth, my cancer doctor's in KC, and I've had nothing but confidence in them, their friendliness, their professionalism, their concern, etc. And it's like a Baptist church. You can find a good Baptist church in this community and a horrible Baptist church in that community. I'm sure there are bad VAs, or at least bad representatives of VA, but they've been good to me.
Yeah, early a couple decades ago, I had some bad experiences with the VA. So some medical issues I had to go through, and cancer being one of them. I'm a 2-time survivor. At the time, I wasn't able to get the answers quickly and the treatment that I needed right away through the VA system. So I went into the private sector. Now, fast forward to about 2 years ago, when Agent Orange became a bigger thing. I was able to get back into the VA system and get the answers that had been eluding me for all of those years. And yes, they've come through big time over the last couple of years. And I think we just need to reach out to our fellow veterans and just say, just keep trying.
Absolutely.
And if necessary, go to a veteran service officer within the American Legion, the VFW. Connect with somebody who is knowledgeable about all of the changing rules and regulations for the VA, because sometimes they can fill out all the forms. They can cut the time that it takes in order to get from application to solution.
I laugh at that because after my diagnosis, I went up to the county courthouse and went to the VA rep that Missouri provides. And he asked me some questions, et cetera, and so forth. And he said, I suppose you want to file a claim? And I said, well, yeah. And I expected him to hand me 800 pieces of paper to fill out. And he said, have a seat, fired up his computer, did everything. And at the end of it, he's hit send. And I said, now what? And he said, now we hope it lands on the desk of a 60-year-old vet, not some 20-year-old punk. And I said, how long? And he said, hey, it's the government, who knows? But I think it was 6 weeks later, I had a disability determination. And it doesn't always work that quickly, I guess.
Right.
And in my case, it went well. And thankfully, I don't have to pay for all these meds that are so stinking expensive and all the procedures. But do I wish I didn't have cancer? Of course I do. Did it come from Vietnam? Probably, maybe, who knows? But I'm not going to whine about, oh, if I hadn't gone to Vietnam, I wouldn't have. Stuff happens.
Exactly.
Stuff happens.
And even for those that did not serve in the military, there is always avenues for help out there. Somebody that can help you navigate if you have to go through cancer, if you have to go through any kind of situations, whether they're legal situations, medical situations, and I'll reach out for the help. Very often through your religious connections and everything, you can find people that can help. Our generation, it's tough right now because our generation of Vietnam veterans and everything are dying off at an astronomical rate. I think I read it's almost 400 per day. Vietnam veterans are passing away. And what's even more disheartening is that almost 22 a day are taking their own lives. They're just saying, I can't deal with this any longer. And instead of getting the necessary help that could help them.
And of course, that's not with non-vets. It's
Afghan.
Yeah.
It's disheartening when you read statistics like that, because we 10 years ago we were watching the end of the World War II generation who were dying off, and now all of a sudden that flag is kind of turned towards the Korean and Vietnam veterans too. That we are that next generation that are looking a little bit closer to the end than we could see from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So what's the prognosis? You're being treated for the kidney issues and for the myeloma?
The kidney's up to about 17% and looking good. I've never drank as much water as I have since this diagnosis, but
which means you have to go to the bathroom constantly.
Oh yeah. And the multiple myeloma, it's classified as not curable but treatable, and I almost don't like to mention it because my side effects are minimal compared to so many other people. My treatments are more than tolerable compared to so many other people. That could go south at any moment, obviously, but right now, I think the kidney thing was a God wink in the sense that without the kidney thing, the multiple myeloma would have continued to do its thing. And by the time it was manifesting itself, it might have put me in a really, really tough spot. But right now, we're hanging in. The numbers are steady. And I take a daily chemo pill and some other stuff, and the the real biggest side effect is fatigue. And is that because I'm older than dirt or because of the chemo? I'm probably a combination of the two, but a nap is a wonderful thing until you have to take one.
Right, right. And I mean, the most important thing for each of us every day is to get up and walk over to the mirror and see our reflection. So then you know
for a reason. Yep.
you got a first step on the day. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure just sitting and sharing a conversation with you. Again, folks, the website, visit the website, listen to some of the blogs. I think you'll find them very, very interesting and informative. You may want to also, grab a copy of Captured by Grace, and you have any follow-ups, any other books in the works right now?
No, it took 40 years of nagging. I mean, counseling for me to actually write that book. And the ultimate reason I wrote the book is because I'm hopeful that people will donate it to jails and prisons, and it might give somebody a spark of hope. Like, I got when I was in jail and read a similar type book.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is live your life, seize the day. All those other cliches, they're cliches because they're true. And you mentioned about looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, okay, I got this. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah. Well, speaking of cliches, every show that I do, I end with Oscar Wilde, be yourself because everyone else is already taken.
Copy that.
You understand that. I said at the top of the show, it was a pleasure to welcome a brother to the conversation. And I thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. It's been a real joy.
So go out and make it a great day, and come back and see us again next time for another episode of Someone You Should Know. And again, a big thank you and welcome home, brother, to Jack Hager. Thanks again, Jack.
You bet.
Someone You Should Know.